The Starship Odyssey drifted silently through the endless blackness of space. Its sleek metallic frame gleamed faintly under the distant light of a dying star. Inside, the crew went about their tasks with practiced efficiency. They had been traveling, for weeks, mapping uncharted sectors of the galaxy as part of a routine exploration mission. It was quiet work, often monotonous, but necessary to expand humanity's understanding of the universe. Captain Liam Carter stood on the bridge, his tall figure silhouetted against the glowing panels of the control console. He was in his mid-30s with short brown hair and sharp blue eyes that always seemed to be scanning for something beyond the horizon. To his left sat Dr. Emily Hayes, the ship's xenobiologist. She was younger than most senior scientists, barely into her late 20s, but she carried herself with confidence. Her blonde hair was tied back neatly, and her green eyes darted between screens filled with data streams. Next to her was Ryan Cole, her assistant, who looked more like a college student than someone entrusted with helping analyze alien life forms. He was lanky, with messy dark hair and glasses perched precariously on his nose. Behind them, Lieutenant Grace Miller leaned casually against the wall. As the head of security, she was responsible for keeping everyone safe during these missions. Her presence was calming yet intimidating, a paradox that came naturally to her. With her cropped black hair and piercing gray eyes, she exuded strength without saying a word. Today, however, even she couldn't hide the boredom etched onto her face. "Anything yet?" Liam asked, breaking the silence. His voice carried just enough authority to demand attention, but not so much that it felt overbearing. Emily shook her head. "Nothing unusual so far," she replied. "Just empty space and a few stray asteroids. Nothing we haven't seen before." Ryan adjusted his glasses nervously. "Well, technically, there's still a lot we don't know about this region," he said. "We're pretty far from known space. Who knows what might be out here?" Grace raised an eyebrow at him. "And who knows how long we'll have to wait until we find out?" She muttered dryly. Liam chuckled softly. "Patience is key, people. We're explorers, not thrill seekers." But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Just as Liam finished speaking, one of the sensors began beeping loudly. Everyone turned toward the main display screen, where a blinking red dot had appeared amidst the sea of stars. The object was moving slowly, almost imperceptibly, but its readings were unlike anything they'd encountered before. "What do we have here?" Liam asked, leaning forward. Emily quickly tapped at her console, pulling up additional information. "It's in some kind of vessel," she said after a moment. "But it's not human-made. Look at the design, it's completely alien." The image on the screen sharpened, revealing a massive, jagged ship floating aimlessly through space. Its surface was covered in strange ridges and spines, giving it the appearance of a predator lying in wait. Dark streaks ran across its hull, resembling scars or burn marks. Whatever this thing was, it had clearly seen its share of battles. Ryan let out a low whistle. "That's incredible," he murmured. "I mean, we've seen alien ships before, sure, but nothing like this." "This looks ancient," Grace frowned. "Or dangerous," she added pointedly. "We should keep our distance until we know more." Liam nodded thoughtfully. "Agreed. Let's get closer but stay cautious. Activate the long-range scanners and see if we can pick up any energy signatures." As the Odyssey approached the mysterious craft, the tension aboard the ship grew palpable. Every creak of the hull, every flicker of the lights seemed louder than usual. No one spoke. All eyes were glued to the monitors displaying the alien vessel. "It's huge," Emily whispered finally. "Much bigger than I initially thought. And those patterns on the hull, they look organic, almost like living tissue fused with metal." Ryan squinted at the screen. "Do you think it's possible? Could this ship actually be alive?" Before Emily could answer, another alarm blared throughout the bridge. This time it wasn't just a warning. It was urgent. A burst of electromagnetic interference had disrupted their systems momentarily, causing several consoles to flicker wildly. "What was that?" Grace demanded, gripping the hilt of her sidearm instinctively. "I don't know," Liam admitted, his jaw tightening. "But whatever it is, it doesn't feel friendly." Emily worked furiously to stabilize the readings. "Wait, look at this." she exclaimed suddenly. On the screen, a series of symbols began flashing rapidly, forming complex patterns that shifted and changed like liquid fire. "It's trying to communicate," Ryan said breathlessly. "Or maybe warn us." Grace crossed her arms skeptically. "Or maybe it's luring us in. Either way, I don't like it." Despite her concerns, Liam made a decision. "We need answers. Prep a boarding team. We're going inside." A murmur of protest rippled through the group, but no one dared argue outright. After all, this was why they were out here, to explore the unknown, no matter how risky it might be. Within minutes, Liam, Emily, Ryan, and Grace suited up in protective gear and boarded a small shuttlecraft. The ride over to the alien ship was tense, each person lost in their own thoughts. When they finally docked, the airlock hissed open, revealing a dimly lit interior that stretched endlessly into shadow. Stepping inside felt like entering another world entirely. The walls pulsed faintly as though breathing, and strange tendrils hung from the ceiling like roots. Everything smelled faintly metallic, tinged with something else, something unidentifiable but unsettling. "This place gives me the creeps," Grace muttered, her weapon drawn and ready. "You're not alone," Ryan replied quietly, clutching a scanner tightly in his hands. Emily moved cautiously forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a series of glowing glyphs embedded in the wall. "These markings, they're similar to ones we've seen on Class 15 death worlds." Liam frowned. "Class 15? Are you sure?" She nodded grimly. "Positive. Those planets are supposed to be uninhabitable. If this ship comes from one of them..." She trailed off, letting the implications hang heavy in the air. Grace tightened her grip on her weapon. "Let's focus on finding out what happened here and getting back to the Odyssey. The sooner we leave, the better." As they ventured deeper into the ship, the atmosphere grew colder, heavier. Strange noises echoed around them, soft clicks, faint whispers, and the occasional groan of shifting metal. At one point, Ryan swore. He saw something move out of the corner of his eye, but when he turned, there was nothing there. Finally, they reached what appeared to be a central chamber. In the middle of the room stood a crystalline structure, pulsating with an eerie blue light. Thin veins of energy coursed through it, branching outward like a network of veins. "That has to be the power source," Emily said, stepping closer, despite Grace's protests. "If we can study it, we might learn more about this ship and where it came from." But as she reached out to touch it, the ground beneath them trembled violently. Lights flickered, casting grotesque shadows across the walls. Then, without warning, holographic images sprang to life, showing scenes of destruction, planets exploding, cities crumbling, entire civilizations wiped out in fiery blasts. Grace grabbed Emily's arm and pulled her back. "We need to go. Now." Liam hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. But as the images faded and the room fell silent once more, he realized they weren't alone. Something or someone was watching them, and it knew they were there. The group froze in the dimly lit chamber, their breaths shallow and uneven. The holographic images had vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving behind only shadows and silence. Yet the feeling of being watched lingered like a weight pressing down on them. Grace tightened her grip on her weapon, her sharp eyes scanning every corner of the room. "What was that?" Ryan whispered, his voice trembling. He clutched his scanner so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "I don't know," Liam replied, his tone calm but firm. "But we need to stay focused. Let's figure out what this ship wants before it decides to show us again." Emily moved closer to the crystalline structure in the center of the room, her scientific curiosity overpowering her fear. She studied the glowing veins of energy pulsating through it. "This thing, it's not just a power source," she said slowly. "It's alive, or at least it's mimicking life. Look at how it reacts when we move." Sure enough, as Emily stepped closer, the blue light flickered brighter, almost as if responding to her presence. Thin tendrils of energy stretched outward, curling gently toward her hand. She hesitated for a moment, then reached out cautiously. "Emily, wait!" Grace barked, stepping forward to stop her. But before she could intervene, Emily touched the surface of the crystal. A jolt of energy surged through her arm, making her gasp and stumble backward. "Are you okay?" Liam asked, rushing to her side. She nodded, rubbing her hand where the energy had struck. "I'm fine. It didn't hurt. Just startled me. But I think it tried to communicate." Grace rolled her eyes. "Great. Now we're dealing with a chatty alien artifact. Just what we needed." Ignoring her sarcasm, Emily continued. "It wasn't random. The energy pulse felt deliberate, like it was trying to send a message." Ryan adjusted his glasses nervously. "If it's trying to talk, maybe we should listen. What if it knows something about where this ship came from, or why it's here?" Liam considered this for a moment. "All right, let's see if we can decode whatever it's saying. Ryan, get your equipment set up. Emily, keep an eye on that crystal. Grace, watch our backs." As Ryan unpacked his portable analysis kit, the others spread out around the room. Grace positioned herself near the entrance, keeping a wary eye on the dark corridors beyond. Shadows danced along the walls, making it hard to tell whether they were real or imagined. "This place is giving me goosebumps," Ryan muttered as he connected his scanner to the crystal. "Feels like it's watching us." "It probably is," Grace replied flatly, "and I don't trust it one bit." Despite her unease, Ryan worked quickly, running diagnostics and feeding data into his device. After several minutes of tense silence, the scanner began beeping rapidly. Lines of code scrolled across its tiny screen, too fast for anyone to read. "I've got something," Ryan announced excitedly. "It's some kind of language, but it's not like anything I've ever seen before. It's complex, layered, almost like DNA strands." Emily leaned over his shoulder, her eyes wide with fascination. "That makes sense. If this ship is tied to a Class 15 death world, its creators might have used biological components in their technology. This could be a hybrid system, part machine, part organism." Liam frowned. "Can you translate it?" Ryan hesitated. "Maybe, but it'll take time. And even then, there's no guarantee it'll make sense." Before anyone could respond, a low hum filled the chamber. The sound grew louder, vibrating through the floor and walls until it felt like the entire ship was coming alive. The crystalline structure pulsed erratically, its glow shifting from blue to red. "What's happening now?" Grace demanded, raising her weapon. "I don't know," Ryan shouted, frantically typing commands into his scanner. "It's reacting to something." Suddenly, the walls around them shimmered, and new holographic projections appeared. These weren't chaotic scenes of destruction like before. They were orderly, almost clinical. Images of planets, stars, and strange creatures flickered into view, accompanied by streams of symbols that seemed to float in midair. "It's showing us its history," Emily realized aloud. "These are records, maps, maybe even logs of its journey." One image caught everyone's attention, a planet wreathed in fire and smoke, its surface cracked and barren. Around it orbited debris fields and shattered moons. Even without words, the message was clear. This was a Class 15 death world, the ship's point of origin. But then the projection shifted, showing something unexpected. Amid the ruins of the devastated planet, there were signs of human activity. Structures that looked eerily familiar, ships bearing designs reminiscent of Earth's own vessels. "Is that us?" Liam asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily stared at the image, her expression unreadable. "It can't be. Humans have never been to a Class 15 death world. It's impossible." Grace narrowed her eyes. "Or maybe someone didn't tell us everything." As the holograms faded once more, the hum subsided, leaving the chamber eerily quiet. For a moment, no one spoke. The implications of what they'd just seen were too overwhelming to process. Finally, Liam broke the silence. "We need to find out more. If humans were involved somehow, we owe it to ourselves and to them to uncover the truth." Grace shook her head. "You're forgetting one important detail. Whatever happened here, it ended badly. That planet is dead. Do you really want to stick around and find out why?" "She's right," Ryan added nervously. "We don't know what this ship is capable of. For all we know, it could be luring us deeper inside. Emily crossed her arms, her mind racing. But think about it. If this ship has information about humanity's past, doesn't that mean it's already interacted with us? Maybe even assimilated parts of us? We can't just walk away. Liam nodded slowly. Agreed. We'll proceed carefully, but we're not leaving until we understand what we're dealing with. With renewed determination, the group pressed onward, deeper into the alien vessel. The corridors twisted and turned unpredictably, their organic design making it difficult to navigate. Strange noises echoed around them, soft clicks, faint whispers, and the occasional groan of shifting metal. At times the walls seemed to ripple as though alive. Grace remained on high alert, her weapon drawn and ready. Keep your eyes open, she warned. If this ship is as dangerous as it seems, we're walking into a trap. No kidding, Ryan muttered under his breath. Despite his nervousness, he couldn't help but marvel at the ship's architecture. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Half machine, half organism. How does something like this even exist? Emily glanced at him. Survival. Whatever built this ship adapted to survive in the harshest conditions imaginable. That's why it came from a Class 15 death world, a place where most life forms wouldn't last 5 minutes. Liam stopped suddenly, holding up a hand to signal the others. Ahead, the corridor opened into another large chamber. Unlike the previous one, this room was filled with pods, dozens of them arranged in neat rows. Each pod glowed faintly, its translucent surface revealing shadowy shapes within. What are those? Ryan asked, his voice barely audible. Grace stepped forward, cautiously peering into the nearest pod. Inside, suspended in a gel-like substance, was a humanoid figure. Its features were distorted, almost grotesque, with elongated limbs and bulbous eyes. But despite its alien appearance, there was something unsettlingly familiar about it. They look human, Emily said softly. But not entirely. Like hybrids. Liam's jaw tightened. So this ship isn't just a relic, it's actively experimenting. Combining species, creating new ones. Ryan swallowed hard. Do you think it's still doing it? Before anyone could answer, the pods began to hum softly. One by one, the lids slid open, releasing clouds of vapor into the air. The figures inside stirred, their movements sluggish, but deliberate. Grace raised her weapon. Everyone, back up. Slowly. The hybrids emerged from their pods, their mismatched bodies twitching as they adjusted to movement. They turned their heads in unison, fixing their eerie gaze on the intruders. This isn't good, Ryan whispered. Liam grabbed Emily's arm and pulled her toward the exit. Run! The group bolted down the corridor, the sound of heavy footsteps echoing behind them. The hybrids were slow at first, but they quickly gained speed, their unnatural limbs propelling them forward with terrifying agility. Grace fired a warning shot, the blast ricocheting off the wall. Keep moving. Don't let them surround us. They sprinted through the twisting passages, dodging tendrils and leaping over obstacles. Behind them, the hybrids closed in, their guttural growls growing louder with each passing second. Up ahead, Liam shouted, spotting a narrow doorway. Through there! One by one, they squeezed through the opening, slamming it shut behind them. Grace jammed her knife into the locking mechanism, buying them precious seconds. We can't outrun them. Forever, Ryan panted, clutching his side. Emily looked around the small chamber they'd entered. There has to be another way out. We can't go back the way we came. Liam scanned the room, his eyes landing on a hatch in the ceiling. Up there. Let's move. Working together, they managed to pry the hatch open and climb through. Above them lay a network of maintenance tunnels, cramped and claustrophobic but free of pursuers. For now. As they crawled through the narrow space, the reality of their situation sank in. This ship wasn't just a relic of the past, it was alive, intelligent, and dangerous. And somewhere within its depths lay answers. Answers that could change everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe. But getting those answers would. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and suffocating, the air thick with the smell of rust and something faintly metallic. The group crawled forward as quickly as they could, their movements hampered by the low ceiling and sharp edges that dug into their hands and knees. Every few seconds they paused to listen for sounds of pursuit, but so far the hybrids hadn't found them. Yet. This isn't going to hold them forever, Grace muttered, glancing back toward the hatch they had, sealed behind them. If those things are as smart as they look, they'll figure out where we went. Liam nodded grimly. We need to find another way out of here, or at least somewhere we can regroup. Keep moving. Emily led the way, her small frame allowing her to navigate the tight space more easily than the others. She held her scanner in one hand, its dim light casting long shadows on the walls. There's a junction up ahead, she whispered. Looks like it branches off in 2 directions. Ryan groaned softly. Great. More choices. Because picking between certain death and probable death is always fun. Grace shot him a glare. Focus, Ryan. We don't have time for jokes. I wasn't joking, he mumbled under his breath. When they reached the junction, Emily stopped and studied her scanner again. One path leads downward, probably deeper into the ship. The other goes upward, closer to the surface. She looked at Liam. Which way do you want to go? Liam hesitated. Going deeper meant risking even more danger, but heading upward might trap them if the hybrids caught up. Either choice was risky. Finally, he made a decision. Upward. If we can get closer to the docking bay, maybe we can signal the Odyssey for extraction. Grace nodded approvingly. Good call, let's move. The upward tunnel was steeper than expected, forcing them to climb, rather than crawl. Metal rungs jutted out from the walls at irregular intervals, providing precarious footholds. One wrong step would send them tumbling back down into darkness. Despite this, they pressed on, driven by the urgency of their situation. As they climbed, the atmosphere grew colder, and the walls seemed to pulse faintly, as though the ship itself was alive and reacting to their presence. Strange noises echoed around them, soft clicks, distant groans, and the occasional hiss. It was impossible to tell whether these sounds were harmless or a warning of impending danger. Do you hear that? Ryan asked suddenly, freezing in place. Everyone stopped, straining to listen. At first, there was nothing but silence. Then came a faint scraping sound like claws dragging against metal. It was close. Too close. They're coming, Grace said sharply. Move faster. They scrambled upward as quickly as they dared, their hearts pounding in their chests. The scraping grew louder, accompanied by guttural growls that sent chills down their spines. Whatever was following them was gaining ground. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel and emerged into a larger chamber. It was circular, with high ceilings and strange machinery lining the walls. In the center stood what appeared to be some kind of control console, its surface covered in glowing symbols. This must be an engineering hub, Emily said, hurrying over to the console. If I can figure out how this thing works, maybe we can disable parts of the ship, or at least slow those hybrids down. Ryan joined her, pulling out his own scanner. I'll help. Just give me a minute to interface with it. While Ryan and Emily worked, Grace and Liam took positions near the entrance, keeping watch for any sign of the hybrids. The tension in the room was palpable, each second stretching longer than the last. How much longer? Liam asked, his voice tight with impatience. Not sure, Ryan replied without looking up. His fingers flew across the keyboard of his device, typing furiously. This system is unlike anything I've seen before. It's learning as we interact with it. Emily frowned. That's not good. If it's adapting, we might not have much time. Grace tightened her grip on her weapon. Then work faster. They're almost here. Sure enough, the growls grew louder, echoing through the chamber. Shadows moved along the edges of the entrance, distorted by the flickering light. The hybrids were closing in. We've got company, Liam shouted, raising his own weapon. Grace stepped forward, aiming directly at the entrance. Stay focused. Aim for the head. They're slower when injured. The first hybrid lunged into view, its elongated limbs flailing wildly. Grace fired, hitting it square in the chest. It stumbled backward but didn't fall, its grotesque features twisting in rage. Another hybrid appeared behind it, followed by a third. "Too many," Grace yelled, firing again. "We can't hold them off for long." "Almost done," Ryan shouted, his voice strained. "Just a few more seconds." Emily glanced nervously at the advancing creatures. "Hurry, Ryan!" Liam stepped up beside Grace, firing steadily to keep the hybrids at bay. The noise was deafening, the flashes of light blinding. But despite their efforts, the hybrids kept coming, their numbers overwhelming. "There!" Ryan exclaimed suddenly. "I've overridden part of the system. Activating now!" The machinery around them roared to life, vibrating violently. The walls pulsed brighter, and a deep hum filled the chamber. To everyone's surprise, the hybrids froze mid-charge, their heads snapping toward the console as though confused. "What did you do?" Liam asked, lowering his weapon slightly. "I rerouted power to the central core," Ryan explained. "It disrupted their connection to the ship. They're disoriented." Grace didn't lower her weapon. "How long will it last?" Ryan shrugged. "Minutes, maybe less. We need to move while we still can." Without wasting another moment, they sprinted toward the far side of the chamber, where a large door stood partially open. Beyond it lay another corridor, this one wider and better lit than the ones they'd encountered earlier. "This looks promising," Emily said, leading the way. "Maybe it'll take us closer to the docking bay." The group moved quickly, their footsteps echoing loudly in the empty passageway. The walls here were smoother, less organic-looking than the rest of the ship. Panels lined the ceiling, emitting a soft white glow that illuminated their path. After several minutes of running, they came to a stop in front of another set of doors. These were different, thicker, reinforced, and marked with unfamiliar symbols. A small screen beside them blinked rapidly, displaying lines of alien text. "It's locked," Emily said, examining the panel, "but I think I can bypass it." Grace glanced nervously over her shoulder. "Make it quick, those things won't stay confused forever." Emily worked quickly, her fingers flying over the controls. Behind them, the sound of heavy footsteps began to echo once more. The hybrids were recovering. "Got it!" Emily announced triumphantly as the doors slid open with a hiss. Beyond them lay a massive hangar bay, filled with row upon row of dormant ships. Most were small, sleek craft designed for single pilots, but one stood out, a massive vessel resting in the center of the room. "That's our ticket out of here," Liam said, pointing to the larger ship. "Let's go." They ran toward it, their exhaustion forgotten in the face of freedom. As they approached, however, they noticed something strange. Scattered across the floor were pieces of equipment, tools, uniforms, even scraps of paper, all bearing unmistakable signs of human origin. "What is all this?" Ryan asked, picking up a torn piece of fabric emblazoned with an insignia he didn't recognize. Grace knelt beside a discarded helmet, brushing away a layer of dust. "This isn't recent," she said quietly. "Whoever was here, they've been gone for years." Emily examined a nearby console, her expression growing darker. "Look at this," she said, gesturing for the others to join her. On the screen was a series of log entries written in English. Liam leaned in, reading aloud. "Day 47. Project Hydra remains unstable. Core integration continues to show signs of rejection. Casualties rising." He scrolled further. "Day 62. Containment breach in Sector 7. All personnel evacuated. Further attempts deemed too hazardous." Grace frowned. "Hydra? What does that mean?" Ryan shook his head. "No idea. But it sounds like whoever was working on this project lost control and paid the price." Emily continued scrolling until she found another entry. This one was shorter, more desperate. "Final transmission. Do not approach the artifact. Repeat. Do not approach the artifact. It is not contained. It cannot be trusted." A chill ran through the group. Whatever humanity had tried to do here, it had ended in disaster, and now, decades later, they were walking the same path. "We need to leave," Grace said firmly. "Now, before whatever happened to them happens to us." Liam nodded. "Agreed. Let's board the ship and get out of here. They boarded the vessel quickly, sealing the hatch behind them. Inside, the cockpit was surprisingly intact, with controls that bore a striking resemblance to Earth-standard designs. Emily took the pilot seat, her hands moving confidently over the panels. "This should work," she said after a moment. "The systems are compatible with ours. I can fly it." "Good," Liam replied. "Because we've got company." Through the viewport, they saw the hybrids entering the hangar bay, their twisted forms moving with unnatural speed. They were drawn to the ship, pounding on its hull with terrifying force. "Hold on," Emily shouted, powering up the engines. The ship shuddered as it lifted off the ground, sending the hybrids sprawling below. Grace watched them recede as they ascended, her expression grim. "We're not safe yet. That ship knows we're here. It's only a matter of time before it comes after us." The stolen alien ship shuddered as it broke free from the larger vessel's gravitational pull. Emily gripped the controls tightly, her knuckles white as she guided the craft toward the Odyssey. Behind them, the massive alien ship loomed like a predator watching its prey escape. Its jagged silhouette seemed to pulse faintly, almost as if it were alive and aware of their departure. "Hold steady," Liam said, his voice calm but firm. He stood behind Emily, monitoring the navigation systems. "We're almost clear." Grace sat nearby, her weapon resting across her lap, her eyes fixed on the viewport. The hybrids had been left behind in the hangar bay, but she knew better than to assume they were safe. That ship was no ordinary machine. It was intelligent, adaptive, and dangerous. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Even now, Ryan, meanwhile, was hunched over a portable terminal, scrolling through the data they had salvaged from the alien ship's systems. His brow furrowed as he pieced together fragments of information. "This is unbelievable," he muttered under his breath. "What is?" Grace asked sharply, turning to look at him. Ryan glanced up, his expression tense. "These logs, they're not just about experiments, they're about humanity itself. Someone tried to merge human DNA with alien technology. It wasn't just a project. It was an obsession. And it went catastrophically wrong." Emily frowned, glancing back at him briefly before focusing on the controls again. "Merge human DNA? With what?" "That ship," Ryan replied grimly. "It's not just a vessel. It's part biological, part mechanical. The logs talk about using it as a template to create hybrids. But the process was unstable, people died, entire teams disappeared, and then—" He hesitated, swallowing hard. "Then the ship turned on them." A heavy silence fell over the cockpit. The implications were horrifying. If humans had tampered with something so dangerous, they had essentially created their own nightmare. Liam broke the silence. "Do the logs say who was behind this? Was it a government operation, a private company?" Ryan shook his head. "Not explicitly, but there are references to funding sources, classified codes, black budget allocations. Whoever did this didn't want anyone to know." Grace clenched her fists. "So we're dealing with secrets buried decades ago. Great. Just what we needed." Emily guided the ship closer to the Odyssey, which now appeared as a small speck against the vastness of space. "Let's focus on getting back aboard first. Then we can figure out what to do with all this." As they approached the starship, communication channels crackled to life. "Odyssey, this is Captain Carter. We're inbound. Prepare for docking." Static filled the line for a moment before a familiar voice responded. "Captain, this is Lieutenant Harper. Glad to hear from you. We've been monitoring your situation. Are you alone?" Liam exchanged a glance with Grace. "Negative. The alien ship has already deployed hostiles. Assume it's hostile until proven otherwise. Lock down the airlocks once we're aboard." "Understood, sir," Harper replied. "Docking bay is prepped and ready." The stolen ship eased into the docking bay of the Odyssey, its engines powering down with a soft hum. As the hatch opened, the crew stepped out cautiously, greeted by the sight of armed security personnel standing guard. Their faces were tense, weapons raised. "Stand down," Liam ordered. "We're clear, for now." Harper, A tall woman with short red hair approached them. "Captain, we detected energy surges coming from the alien ship shortly after you left. Whatever you did, it worked temporarily, but it's still active." Liam nodded. "Good to know. Seal off the docking bay. I don't want any surprises." Once aboard, the group gathered in the briefing room. The atmosphere was tense, everyone acutely aware of the danger they had narrowly escaped, and the questions that remained unanswered. Liam took charge, pacing slowly as he addressed the team. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," he began. "That ship isn't just alien, it's tied to humanity's history. Someone tried to harness its power, and it cost them everything. Now it's hunting us." Emily leaned forward, her green eyes sharp with determination. "We have enough data to piece together what happened. Those logs mention something called Project Hydra. It involved merging human biology with alien tech. My guess is, it created those hybrids we encountered. But the process failed, and the ship absorbed whatever was left." Grace crossed her arms. "So it's not just a machine. It's evolving, using what it learns to adapt and improve itself." Ryan nodded. "Exactly. And based on the logs, it's been doing this for decades. Every encounter feeds it more information. That's why it reacted so strongly to us. It recognized humanity." Liam stopped pacing, his jaw tightening. "Which means we're not just fighting a ship, we're fighting something that knows us, something that's been preparing for this moment." The weight of his words hung heavily in the air. No one spoke for a moment, each person lost in their thoughts. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "There's something else," she said quietly. "The logs mention survivors. Not many, but some people managed to escape before the project collapsed. They might have reached Earth, or at least tried to." Grace frowned. "You think someone covered it up? Made sure no one found out?" "It's possible," Liam admitted. "If this got out, it would cause panic. Governments don't like looking weak. They'd bury it deep and hope no one ever discovered the truth." Ryan tapped nervously on the table. "But we did discover it. And now that ship knows we're here. What happens next?" Liam straightened, his voice firm. "We prepare. If that ship comes after us, and it will, we need to be ready. Emily, analyze the data further. Find anything that could help us disable it. Grace, reinforce our defenses. Assume the worst-case scenario. Ryan, keep digging into those logs. Look for weaknesses." "And you?" Grace asked. "I'll coordinate with command," Liam replied. "If we're going to survive this, we'll need reinforcements and answers." Over the next several hours, the crew worked tirelessly. Emily pored over the alien data, her mind racing as she deciphered complex algorithms and biological schematics. The ship's core, the crystalline structure they had seen earlier, was central to its operation. It acted as both a brain and a heart, processing information and distributing energy throughout the vessel. "This thing is incredible," Emily murmured to herself, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "It's not just intelligent, it's self-aware, and it's learning faster than I thought possible." Meanwhile, Grace oversaw the fortification of the Odyssey. Extra shields were activated, weapons systems recalibrated, and security protocols tightened. She also implemented quarantine measures, ensuring that anyone showing signs of infection or unusual behavior would be isolated immediately. Ryan, despite his nerves, made significant progress analyzing the logs. He uncovered references to a classified research facility located on one of Earth's moons, a place where Project Hydra had allegedly begun. The facility had been abandoned years ago, its existence erased from public records. "I think we should check it out," Ryan suggested during a quick debriefing. "If there's anything left, it might give us clues about how to stop that ship." Liam considered this carefully. "It's risky. If the facility is still operational, or worse, compromised, we could walk into another trap." "But it's worth the risk," Emily interjected. "Every piece of information helps. We can't face that ship blind." After a brief discussion, Liam agreed. "All right, we'll send a team to investigate, but we go in prepared. No mistakes." As night fell aboard the Odyssey, tensions remained high. The crew rotated shifts, keeping watch for any sign of the alien ship. So far, it hadn't moved. but everyone knew it was only a matter of time. In the quiet moments, Emily found herself staring at the data on her screen, her mind racing with possibilities. This wasn't just a mission anymore, it was personal. That ship had taken countless lives, including those of her fellow humans. She couldn't let it win. Grace, too, felt the weight of responsibility. As she patrolled the corridors, checking security checkpoints, she replayed the events of the past few days in her mind. The hybrids, the pods, the eerie intelligence of the ship. It all added up to one terrifying conclusion. They weren't dealing with a relic of the past. They were facing something new, something born from humanity's hubris. When morning came, the crew gathered once more in the briefing room. Liam stood at the head of the table, his expression resolute. "We leave for the moon within the hour," he announced. "Our objective is simple. Find evidence of Project Hydra and use it to disable that ship. If we succeed, we might stand a chance. If we fail..." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Let's make sure we don't fail." The team nodded, determination etched on their faces. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew they had no choice. The alien ship was coming, and when it arrived, they needed to be ready. As the Odyssey set course for the moon, the alien vessel remained eerily still in the distance. Its jagged spines gleamed faintly under the light of a distant star, casting long shadows across the void. For now, it waited. But its silence was deceptive, a prelude to the storm that would soon follow. And aboard the Odyssey, the crew braced themselves for the battle ahead, a battle not just for survival but for the future of humanity itself. The Odyssey approached the moon cautiously, its engines humming softly as it descended through layers of dust and shadow. The surface below was barren and desolate, marked by countless craters and jagged ridges. But amid the bleak landscape stood the remnants of a structure, a sprawling facility half buried beneath centuries of debris. "This is it," Emily said, pointing to the screen displaying the coordinates they had extracted from the alien logs. "The research base where Project Hydra began." Liam studied the image carefully. The facility looked abandoned, its walls cracked and its windows shattered, yet something about it felt wrong, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for intruders to arrive. "Looks like no one's been here in years," Grace remarked, her voice tinged with skepticism. "But we can't take chances, assume it's booby-trapped or worse." Ryan adjusted his glasses nervously. "Or maybe it's still operational. If this place was working on merging human DNA with alien tech, who knows what kind of experiments are still running?" Liam nodded grimly. "We'll split into 2 teams. Grace and I will lead the way inside. Emily and Ryan, stay near the shuttle and monitor communications. If anything goes sideways, you pull out immediately." "No arguments," Grace added sharply, casting a warning glance at Ryan. "Understood?" Emily hesitated, but eventually nodded. "Understood. Just be careful." With their plans set, the group disembarked from the shuttlecraft and made their way toward the entrance of the facility. The air was thin and cold, and the crunch of their boots against the rocky ground echoed eerily in the silence. As they approached the main doors, Liam raised a hand to signal the others to stop. "These hinges haven't moved in decades," he muttered, examining the rust-covered frame. "But they're not locked." Grace stepped forward, weapon drawn. "Let me go first. If there's trouble, I'll handle it." Liam didn't argue. He trusted Grace's instincts and her reflexes. With a sharp kick, she forced the door open, revealing a dark corridor beyond. The air inside smelled stale, tinged with the faint, metallic scent of decay. "Flashlights on," Liam ordered quietly. The beams cut through the darkness, illuminating walls lined with peeling paint and broken equipment. Dust covered everything, forming thick layers that muffled their footsteps. As they moved deeper into the facility, signs of abandonment became more apparent. Desks were overturned, papers scattered across the floor, flickering monitors displayed, static, their screens cracked and lifeless. It was clear that whoever had worked here had left in a hurry, or hadn't left at all. "Over here," Grace called softly, gesturing to a nearby office. Inside, they found a desk cluttered with documents, some typed, others handwritten in frantic scrawls. One sheet caught Liam's eye, a crude diagram of the alien ship's core surrounded by notes about energy signatures and biological integration. They were trying to replicate it, Liam said grimly. Not just study it, but recreate it. Grace frowned. And look where that got them. Further exploration revealed more disturbing details. In one lab, rows of glass tanks stood empty, their contents long since evaporated or removed. Strange residue clung to the insides, glowing faintly under their flashlights. "What do you think was in these?" Grace asked, her voice low. "Hybrids," Liam replied without hesitation. "Early attempts, maybe. Failed experiments." A shiver ran down Grace's spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone, that unseen eyes were watching them from the shadows. Every sound, every creak made her grip her weapon tighter. Back outside, Emily and Ryan monitored the situation via comms, relaying updates and scanning for anomalies. So far, the facility seemed stable, but Ryan's unease grew with each passing minute. "I don't like this," he admitted, pacing nervously beside the shuttle. "It's too quiet. Something's off." Emily kept her focus on the scanner, though her expression betrayed her own anxiety. "If Grace and Liam find anything useful, it'll be worth it. We just need to hold our position." Suddenly, the scanner beeped loudly. Ryan froze, staring at the screen. "What is it?" Emily asked, leaning over his shoulder. "It's movement," Ryan stammered. "Inside the facility, multiple sources, closing in fast." Before either of them could react, a loud crash echoed through the comms system. Static crackled, followed by Grace's voice shouting, "We've got company, get ready to move." "Company?" Emily repeated, her heart racing. "What kind of company?" Ryan didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed a rifle from the shuttle and handed another to Emily. "Whatever it is, it's not friendly." Inside the facility, Liam and Grace backed away from a rapidly approaching horde of creatures. They resembled the hybrids they'd encountered earlier, but these were different. Larger, stronger, and visibly angrier. Their elongated limbs ended in razor-sharp claws, and their bulbous eyes glowed with an unnatural light. "How did they get here?" Grace demanded, firing a shot that sent one hybrid stumbling backward. "I don't know," Liam replied, aiming his weapon. "But they're not letting us leave." The hybrids surged forward, forcing the pair to retreat into a narrow hallway. Grace slammed her fist against a nearby panel, sealing the door behind them. For now, they were safe, but only temporarily. "We need to find another way out," Liam said urgently. "Can you override the lock on that door?" Grace nodded, already working on the controls. "Give me a minute." Meanwhile, Emily and Ryan prepared for the worst. They armed themselves as best they could, knowing full well they might have to enter the facility to rescue their teammates. Just as they were about to move, however, the ground beneath them trembled violently. "What's happening?" Ryan shouted, struggling to keep his balance. Emily spun around, her eyes widening in horror. Rising from the depths of the moon's surface was a massive structure, part machine, part organism. Its spines twitched and its glowing veins pulsed with energy. "It's the ship," she whispered. "It followed us." The realization hit them like a punch to the gut. They weren't dealing with isolated threats anymore. They were facing a coordinated attack. The alien vessel had tracked them to the moon, and it had brought reinforcements. Inside the facility, Liam and Grace heard the commotion outside. Through a cracked window, they saw the ship rising into view, casting a menacing shadow over the landscape. "That thing's here," Grace said grimly. "Which means we're running out of time." Liam nodded. "We need to regroup with Emily and Ryan. Let's move." Bursting through the sealed door, they sprinted back toward the shuttle. Along the way, they encountered more hybrids, forcing them to fight their way through. By the time they reached the landing site, they were battered and exhausted but alive. "About time," Grace snapped as she reached the shuttle. We've got bigger problems." Emily pointed to the horizon where the alien ship loomed ominously. "That thing isn't leaving until it gets what it wants." "And what does it want?" Ryan asked, his voice trembling. "You," Liam replied, bluntly. "Us. Humanity. It's learning from us, adapting to us, and unless we stop it, it'll keep coming back." For a moment, no one spoke. The enormity of their situation settled heavily on their shoulders. This wasn't just about survival. It was about stopping something far greater than themselves. "We have to destroy it," Emily said finally. Her voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. "If we don't, it'll consume everything." Liam nodded. "Agreed. But how?" Ryan hesitated, then pulled out his tablet. On the screen was a schematic of the alien ship's core, the same diagram they had found inside the facility. "Its power source is also its weakness. If we can overload, it'll self-destruct," Grace finished for him. "But getting close enough to do that won't be easy." "We'll make it work," Liam said firmly. "We don't have a choice." With renewed determination, the group devised a plan. Using the stolen alien ship they had escaped earlier, they would launch a direct assault on the larger vessel. Emily and Ryan would remain aboard the Odyssey, coordinating the operation while Liam and Grace infiltrated the enemy ship. As they boarded the stolen craft, the alien vessel stirred, its tendrils writhing like serpents. It knew they were coming, but it underestimated their resolve. The journey to the alien ship was tense and silent. Each member of the crew understood the stakes. Failure meant annihilation, not just for them, but for humanity itself. When they docked with the alien vessel, the atmosphere was suffocating. The walls pulsed rhythmically as if alive, and strange noises echoed through the corridors. Liam and Grace moved quickly, their weapons at the ready. "This way," Liam whispered, following the map on his wrist console. "The core should be straight ahead." Grace kept watch, her senses on high alert. "Stay sharp, we're not alone." As they neared the central chamber, resistance intensified. Hybrids emerged from every corner, forcing them to fight tooth and nail. Despite the odds, they pressed on, driven by sheer willpower. Finally, they reached the crystalline structure, the heart of the alien ship. Its glow intensified as they approached, reacting to their presence. "Set the charges," Liam ordered, covering Grace as she planted explosives around the core. Grace worked quickly, her hands steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "Done. Let's get out of here." But as they turned to leave, the core pulsed violently, sending waves of energy rippling through the chamber. The ship wasn't going down without a fight. "Move!" Liam shouted, grabbing Grace's arm and pulling her toward the exit. The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a second sun. The alien ship, once a looming threat, was now nothing more than a cloud of debris expanding outward in all directions. On board the Odyssey, the crew watched in silence as the remnants of their enemy dissolved into the void. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of what they had just accomplished and survived was too immense to put into words. "It's gone," Emily finally whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. "We actually did it." Liam stood beside her, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His expression was unreadable, a mix of relief and lingering unease. "For now," he said quietly, "but we can't forget what that thing was, or where it came from." Grace leaned against the wall near the viewport, her weapon still slung across her shoulder. Her gray eyes scanned the empty expanse of space, searching for any sign of movement. "You think there are others?" she asked bluntly. "Other ships like that?" Ryan adjusted his glasses nervously, glancing at the data on his tablet. "It's possible. That ship wasn't just built, it evolved. If it started as part of a project tied to humanity, then who knows how many attempts were made, how many other experiments failed or succeeded." The thought hung in the air like a storm cloud. They had destroyed this particular threat, but the possibility of others lingered, a reminder that the universe was far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Back aboard the Odyssey, the crew began the painstaking process of cataloging everything they had learned. The data recovered from both the alien ship and the abandoned moon facility painted a chilling picture. Project Hydra had been an ambitious and reckless attempt to merge human biology with alien technology. Its goal was unclear, though some logs hinted at creating superior life forms capable of surviving on Class 15 death worlds. What had started as scientific curiosity quickly spiraled out of control, leading to catastrophic consequences. Emily pored over the files late into the night, her mind racing with questions. This wasn't just about survival, she muttered to herself. Whoever ran this project wanted power, to dominate environments so hostile that even the strongest species couldn't endure them, and when it failed, they tried to cover it up. What about the hybrids? Ryan asked, joining her in the makeshift lab. He looked pale, his hands shaking slightly as he held a cup of coffee. Do you think they're still out there? Maybe not just on the moon, but somewhere else? Emily hesitated before answering. I don't know, but if even one survived, it could mean trouble. Those things aren't just dangerous, they're intelligent. They adapt. They learn. Ryan nodded grimly. And if they ever find their way back to Earth? He didn't need to finish the sentence. Both of them understood the stakes. Humanity's interference with alien tech had created something monstrous, and now, decades later, they were dealing with the fallout. Meanwhile, Grace worked tirelessly to reinforce the Odyssey's defenses. She knew better than anyone that their victory was fragile. The alien ship might be gone, but its legacy remained. Every piece of data they had collected suggested that the vessel had been learning, not just from humanity, but from everything it encountered. It was only a matter of time before another entity picked up where it left off. Lieutenant Miller, Liam called, entering the armory. Status report? Grace glanced up briefly before returning to her work. Shields are operational, weapons recalibrated, and security protocols triple-checked. But none of that matters if we face something bigger next time. Liam sighed, running a hand through his hair. We'll deal with whatever comes, one step at a time. Grace frowned. That's the problem, Captain. We're always reacting instead of preparing. Projects like Hydra prove that humanity isn't ready for stuff like this. We play with forces we don't understand. And when things go wrong, we bury the evidence and hope no one notices. Her words struck a nerve, but Liam didn't argue. Deep down, he knew she was right. Humanity's greatest strength, its curiosity, was also its greatest weakness. Too often, people pushed boundaries without considering the consequences. The days that followed were tense but productive. The crew worked together to analyze every scrap of information they had gathered, piecing together the full scope of Project Hydra. What they uncovered was sobering. The operation had been funded by a shadowy coalition of governments and private organizations, all seeking to gain an edge in the race for interstellar dominance. When the project collapsed, records were destroyed, personnel silenced, and facilities abandoned. Only fragments remained, scattered across the galaxy like breadcrumbs. We need to make sure this never happens again, Liam declared during a team meeting. Not just for us, but for future generations. If humanity wants to explore the stars, we have to do it responsibly. And how do you propose we do that? Grace asked skeptically. Governments won't stop meddling and corporations won't stop chasing profit. Someone will try this again, probably sooner than we think. Then we expose the truth, Emily interjected. Her voice was firm, her green eyes blazing with determination. We document everything we've found and send it to command. Let them decide what to do with it. At least then people will know the risks. Ryan nodded in agreement. Exposure is our best shot. If enough people realize how dangerous this kind of research is, maybe they'll push for stricter regulations. Liam considered their suggestions carefully. Finally, he nodded. All right, we'll compile the data and send it to command, but we keep copies for ourselves, just in case. As the Odyssey prepared to leave lunar orbit, the crew took one last look at the desolate landscape below. The abandoned facility stood silent, a monument to humanity's hubris and the cost of unchecked ambition. Though they had destroyed the immediate threat, the scars of Project Hydra would remain forever. "We should name it," Ryan said suddenly, breaking the somber mood. "The moon, I mean. Give it a designation so people remember what happened." "Here," Emily smiled faintly. "How about Hydra Prime?" "Fitting," Liam replied, a reminder of where arrogance leads. With that, the Odyssey turned its engines toward home. As they entered hyperspace, the crew allowed themselves a brief moment of reflection. They had faced unimaginable danger and emerged victorious, but at a cost. Lives had been lost, secrets uncovered, and lessons learned the hard way. Weeks later, as they approached Earth, the reality of their situation began to sink in. The data they carried was explosive, enough to shake the foundations of global politics and spark widespread debate. Yet none of them regretted their decision. They had seen firsthand the consequences of ignoring warnings, and they refused to let history repeat itself. When the Odyssey docked at the orbital station above Earth, representatives from Command were waiting. Their expressions were unreadable as Liam handed over the encrypted files containing everything they had discovered. "This changes everything," one official said gravely. "If even half of this is true." "It's all true," Liam interrupted. "Every word, and if you don't act on it, someone else will pay the price." The official nodded slowly. "Understood. You've done your duty. Leave the rest to us." Back on Earth, the crew went their separate ways, each carrying the weight of their experiences. Emily returned to her research, determined to use her knowledge for good rather than harm. Ryan joined a coalition of scientists advocating for ethical standards in xenobiology. Grace resumed her role as head of security, vowing to protect humanity from threats both foreign and domestic. And Liam? He stayed aboard the Odyssey, ready to lead his crew into the unknown once more. Though their paths diverged, they shared a common bond, a reminder of the fragility of life and the resilience of the human spirit. They had stared into the abyss and come back stronger, wiser, and more united than ever. In the end, they proved that even in the darkest corners of the universe, humanity could prevail, as long as it remembered the lessons of the past.